What had it done to them? Whom had it bothered? What had they seen on it? A nose like all noses. "Boys, count!" commanded Hosea Hessel. "1, 2, 3. But suddenly, nearly always since ever the world began, when a misfortune happens to a man, when robbers surround him in a wood, bind his hands, sharpen their knives, tell him to say his prayers, and are about to finish him off, there comes a woodman with a bell. The robbers run away, and the man lifts his hands on high and praises the Lord for his deliverance. It was just like that with me and my nose. I don't remember whether it was at the 5th or 6th blow that the door opened and Benny Polkovoy came in. The boys freed me at once, and remained standing like blocks of wood. Benny took them in hand one by one. He caught each boy by the ear, twisted it round, and said, "Well, now you will know what it means to meddle with a widow's boy." From that day the boys did not touch either me or my nose. They were afraid to begin with the widow's boy whom Benny had taken under his wing, into his guardianship, under his protection. The widow's boy. I had no other name at Cheder. This was because my mother was a widow. She supported herself by her own work. She had a little shop in which were, for the most part, so far as I can remember, chalk and locust beans, the two things that sell best in Mazepevka. Chalk is wanted for whitewashing the houses, and locust beans are a luxury. They are sweet, and they are light in weight, and they are cheap. Schoolboys spend on them all the money they get for breakfast and dinner, and the shopkeepers make a good profit out of them. I could never understand why my mother was always complaining that she could hardly make enough to pay the rent and my school fees. Why school fees? What about the other things a human being needs, food and clothes and boots, for example? She thought of nothing but the school fees. "When the Lord punished me," she wailed, "and took my husband from me, and such a husband, and left me all alone, I want my son to be a scholar at any rate." What do you say to that? Do you think she did not come frequently to the Cheder and find out how I was getting on? I say nothing of the prayers she took good care I should recite every morning. She was always lecturing me to be even half as good as my father, peace be unto him. And whenever she looked at me, she said I was exactly like him. May I have longer years than he? And her eyes grew moist. Her face grew curiously careworn and had a mournful expression. I hope he will forgive me, I mean my father, from the other world, but I could not understand what sort of a man he had been. From what my mother told of him, he was always either praying or studying. Had he never been drawn, like me, out into the open on summer mornings when the sun was not burning yet, and was just beginning to show in the sky, marching rapidly onwards, a fiery angel in a fiery chariot, drawn by fiery horses, into whose brilliant, burning, guinea-gold faces it was impossible to look? I ask you, what taste have the weekday prayers on such a morning? What sort of a pleasure is it to sit and read in a stuffy room when the golden sun is burning and the air is hot as an iron frying pan? On such a time you are tempted to run down the hill to the river, the beautiful river that is covered with a green slime. A peculiar odour as of a warm bath comes from the distance. You want to undress and jump into the warm water. Under the trees it is cool, and the mud is soft and slippery, and the curious insects that live at the bottom of the river whirl around and about before your eyes, and curious long-legged flies skip and slide on the surface of the water. At such a time one desires to swim over to the other side, over to where the green flags grow, their yellow and white stalks shimmering in the sun. A green fresh fern looks up at you, and you go after it, plash, plash, into the water, hands down and feet up, so that people might think you were swimming. I ask you again, what pleasure is it to sit in a little room on a summer's evening, when the great dome of the sky is dropping over the other side of the town? lighting up the spire of the church, the shingle roofs of the baths, and the big windows of the synagogue. And on the other side of the town, on the common, the goats are bleating, and the lambs are frisking, the dust rising to the heavens, the frogs croaking. There is a tearing and a shrieking and a tumult as at a regular fair. Who thinks of praying at such a time? But if you talk to my mother, she will tell you that her husband, peace be unto him, did not succumb to temptations. He was a different sort of man. What sort of a man he was, I do not know, asking his pardon. I only know that my mother annoys me very much. She reminds me every minute that I had a father, and throws it into my teeth that she has to pay my school fees for me. For this she asks only two things of me, that I should learn diligently and say my prayers willingly. It could not be said that the widow's boy did not learn well. He was not in any way behind his comrades, but I cannot guarantee that he said his prayers willingly. All children are alike, and he was as mischievous as any other boy. He, like the rest, was fond of running away and playing, though there is not much to be said of the play of Jewish children. They tie a paper bag to a cat's tail so that she may run through the house like mad, smashing everything in her way. They lock the women's portion of the synagogue from the outside on Friday nights, so that the women may have to be rescued. They nail the teacher's shoes to the floor, or seal his beard to the table with wax when he is asleep. But oh, how many thrashings do they get when their tricks are found out! It may be gathered that everything must have an originator, a commander, a head, a leader who shows the way. Our leader, our commander, was Benny Polkovoy. From him all things originated, and on our heads were the consequences. Benny of the fat face and red, fishy eyes always managed to escape scot-free from the scrapes. He was always innocent as a dove. Whatever tricks or mischief we did, we always got the idea from Benny. Who taught us to smoke cigarettes in secret, letting the smoke out through our nostrils? Benny. Who told us to slide on the ice in winter with the peasant boys? Benny. Who taught us to gamble with buttons, to play odd or even, and lose our breakfasts and dinners? Benny. He was up to every trick and taught us them all. He won our last groshens from us, and when it came to anything, Benny had disappeared. Playing was to us the finest thing in the world, and for playing we got the severest thrashings from our teacher. He said he would tear out of us the desire to play. "Play in my house, you will play with the angel of death," said the teacher, and he used to empty our pockets of everything and thrash us most liberally. But there was one week of the year when we were allowed to play. Why do I say allowed? It was a righteous thing to play then. And that week was the week of Chanukah, and we played with spinning tops, dreidels. It is true that the games of cards, bridge and whist, for example, which are played at Chanukah nowadays, have more sense in them than the old game of spinning tops. But when the play is for money, it makes no difference what it is. I once saw two peasant boys beating one another's heads against the wall. When I asked them why they were doing this, if they were out of their minds, they told me to go my road. They were playing a game for money, which of them would get tired the soonest of having his head banged on the wall. The game of spinning tops that have 4 corners, each marked with a letter of the alphabet, and are like dice, is very exciting. One can lose one's soul playing it. It is not so much the loss of the money as the annoyance of losing. Why should the other win? Why should the top fall on the letter Gimel for him and on Nun for you? I suppose you know what the 4 letters stand for. Nun means no use. Hey means half. Base means bad. And Gimel means good. The top is a sort of lottery. Whoever is fortunate wins. Take for example Benny Polkovoy. No matter how often he spins the top, it always